There is a quiet strength in withdrawal, a power that the world rarely recognizes because it is invisible to those who equate movement with progress, noise with influence, and presence with authority. From the earliest moments of life, society teaches us to chase validation, chase recognition, chase love, chase approval. Yet, what if the true measure of strength lies not in pursuit, but in retreat? What if the one who steps back, who removes himself from the clamor, is in fact the one who commands the deepest authority, the truest influence, the kind of power that does not demand attention but is felt everywhere in subtle ways? Withdrawal is often misunderstood as weakness. To those who watch from the outside, it may seem as though the withdrawn person is disengaged, passive, or even fearful. But real withdrawal is not avoidance. It is conscious. It is deliberate. It is the act of reclaiming your energy from the arenas that seek to dilute it. The one who withdraws does not scatter themselves in the pursuit of approval or recognition. Instead, they conserve, they focus, they allow their presence to gather weight like a magnet growing stronger in stillness. When you withdraw, you observe. You see the dynamics around you with clarity because your energy is no longer entangled in the distractions of chasing.
You notice the subtleties of human behavior, the silent motivations, the unspoken desires. You begin to understand who is genuinely aligned with your energy and who is only drawn to the reflection of your efforts. Withdrawal is a lens that sharpens perception, turning what once seemed chaotic into a map of understanding, a terrain where your instincts are no longer muffled by the noise of compulsion.
There is also a reclaiming that happens in withdrawal. When you stop pursuing, you stop giving away fragments of yourself in desperate attempts to be seen or heard. Every moment you spend chasing is a moment of surrender to another's judgment, another's approval. But when you step back, when you embrace the power of absence, you draw boundaries, not through confrontation, but through quiet assertion. You begin to see that power is not the act of forcing the world to notice you, but the art of allowing the world to feel your absence, to sense the gravity you exude without even moving. The psychological truth of withdrawal is that it creates space for authenticity. When you are no longer running to meet expectations or justifying your worth in the eyes of others, you encounter yourself, and in that encounter, there is clarity. The things that once seemed urgent lose their urgency. The people who once demanded your energy are revealed for what they truly are. The illusions of importance that society imposes fade into perspective. Withdrawal is not isolation, it is introspection. It is the cultivation of a center so strong that nothing external can destabilize it. And yet, this power of withdrawal is subtle. It does not scream. It does not seek applause or validation. It is felt in the stillness between words, in the absence of reaction, in the quiet that unsettles those accustomed to noise. It teaches patience, restraint, and self-possession. It allows life to unfold without interference, yet paradoxically, it influences more profoundly than any act of force. Those who understand the power of withdrawal recognize that chasing is a form of scattering the soul, begging is a surrender of sovereignty, and explaining is a concession to misunderstanding. True mastery begins when the need to control, to pursue, or to justify is relinquished. In that relinquishment, the energy that once leaked through compulsion gathers into a quiet force, an internal reservoir of presence that draws rather than pushes, that commands without demand, that creates without effort. There is a force in absence that the world rarely understands. Presence is celebrated, attention is coveted, and visibility is mistaken for power. Yet absence carries its own weight, its own energy, its own quiet gravity that bends the course of influence without effort. When you remove yourself from the arena of constant validation, when you step away from the demands of expectation, you are not abandoning life, you are reshaping it. Absence is not emptiness, it is a presence that cannot be contained, a force that moves unseen, a signal that communicates more than words ever could. The energetic impact of absence is paradoxical. Those who are used to chasing, clinging, and demanding fail to notice it. But absence has a way of creating tension, drawing attention through what is withheld rather than what is offered. People are forced to confront the silence left behind, to reckon with the space you no longer occupy, and in that confrontation, truths emerge. Your absence is a mirror, reflecting not only your own power, but the hidden dependencies and desires of those around you. It compels reflection, it evokes longing, it exposes the illusions that thrive in noise. To understand the energy of absence, one must first recognize the cost of presence when it is given without consciousness. Every forced smile, every explanation, every desperate reach for acknowledgement dilutes the self. The more we attempt to fill the space around us with attention and affirmation, the more we scatter our energy. But when we step back, when we embrace absence, the energy we conserve transforms into a silent force field. It is magnetic, subtle, and undeniable. It does not demand attention. It simply radiates influence. Those attuned to this energy sense it immediately, even if they cannot articulate why. Absence also teaches boundaries in a way that words cannot. By withholding ourselves from interactions that drain, diminish, or distract, we assert a form of authority that is inherently non-aggressive. It is not a defense, it is not rejection, and it is not cruelty, it is recognition of self-worth. Energy follows attention. And by withholding our attention from what does not serve our growth, we redirect it inward toward our own evolution. In the quiet spaces created by absence, insight blooms, clarity emerges. The patterns of our lives, previously obscured by constant engagement, reveal themselves. The power of absence is amplified by consistency. Random withdrawal may be misread as retreat, confusion, or indifference, but deliberate absence communicates mastery. It signals that your energy is not for disposal, that your presence is not granted lightly, and that your life is guided by principles, not by the whims of others. In this energetic economy, nothing is wasted, nothing is forced, and nothing is given to diminish the soul. The world, unaccustomed to such self-possession, often responds with curiosity, admiration, or even discomfort. The ripple effect of absence can shift relationships, provoke reflection, and catalyze growth in ways presence never could. Absence is also intimately tied to authenticity. It is the space where pretenses fall away, where masks no longer need to be worn, and where the core self can breathe.
In a culture obsessed with performance, those who step back reveal a different dimension of power, one that does not require applause, one that is immune to external judgment, one that exists because it simply is.
This is the energy that cultivates patience, that nurtures discernment, that teaches the subtle art of influence without intrusion. When practiced consciously, absence becomes more than a tool. It becomes a philosophy. It is a recognition that energy is finite, attention is precious, and influence is not in the quantity of engagement, but in the quality of presence. Those who grasp this principle begin to live in a rhythm where withdrawal and participation are balanced, where silence speaks louder than explanation, where stillness exerts a pull stronger than force, where absence itself becomes a language that communicates the depth, integrity, and sovereignty of the self. There is a subtle mastery in not explaining, a form of power that the world often mistakes for detachment or indifference. Society teaches us that clarity, requires justification, that understanding requires proof, that relationships demand constant explanation. Yet, every time we feel compelled to justify ourselves, to narrate our truth for others, to defend our choices, we dilute our presence. The act of explaining is often a surrender, a concession to the external gaze, a way of seeking validation from minds that may never fully understand. True power emerges when we resist that compulsion, when we cultivate the discipline of non-explanation. To withhold explanation is not to withdraw from responsibility. It is not to refuse communication or to hide in secrecy. Rather, it is the conscious choice to place the locus of understanding within yourself. When you explain less, you surrender the need for external approval. You recognize that your intentions, your emotions, and your decisions are anchored in your own perception of truth, not in the fluctuating interpretations of others. Every time you stop justifying, you reclaim energy that would otherwise be lost in futile attempts to control perception. The discipline of non-explanation transforms relationships, for it forces a shift in how others perceive your presence. When you cease to explain, you create space for reflection. People are confronted with their own assumptions, their own need to interpret, their own dependence on narratives. Your silence in explanation is not withdrawal from dialogue, but an invitation to introspection, a quiet assertion that your reality is not negotiable, that your energy is not disposable, that your life cannot be fully understood through the lens of another's comprehension. This discipline is rooted in the understanding that human perception is limited. No matter how eloquent your words, no matter how thorough your reasoning, some will misunderstand, some will judge, and some will project their own biases onto your truth. Explaining repeatedly is an act of surrender to these distortions. By choosing not to explain, you step out of that cycle. You create an internal sovereignty, a self-contained clarity that does not need external validation. The discipline of non-explanation is the cultivation of self-trust, a recognition that your understanding of your own experience is sufficient, complete, and authoritative. Furthermore, the act of not explaining sharpens discernment. It forces you to recognize when engagement is necessary and when it is futile. It cultivates patience, restraint, and a refined sense of timing. Some truths, when over-explained, lose their potency. Some moments demand silence more than words. By exercising this discipline, you learn the rhythm of influence, when to act, when to speak, and when to let presence alone communicate what words cannot. Non-explanation also fosters authenticity. When you stop bending yourself to the comprehension of others, you reveal a self that is undiluted, unmolded, unburdened by the need for approval. People respond not to your justifications, but to your presence, to the energy that emanates from a being comfortable in their own integrity. Authenticity thrives in this space because it is untethered from expectation, unshaken by judgment, and unwavering in its own truth. Yet, this discipline is challenging because it goes against the natural instinct to defend, to clarify, to make others see. It requires courage to accept that not everyone will understand, that not everyone will approve, that not everyone will witness your truth. It requires a deep recognition that your worth is not contingent upon comprehension, that your influence does not depend on explanation, and that the most profound power often resides in letting go of the need to justify, rationalize, or defend. There is a profound paradox in life. The more you chase, the less you possess. The more you grasp, the more slips through your fingers. Society teaches that strength comes from pursuit, that success is the product of relentless effort, that love and recognition are earned through persistence. Yet there exists a higher law, a spiritual reversal in which withdrawal, stillness, and detachment become the true sources of influence and fulfillment. The world expects pursuit, but the soul thrives in stillness. The world demands justification, but the spirit speaks in quiet authority. The reversal is this: what you stop chasing, what you no longer beg for, what you cease to explain begins paradoxically to move toward you. This reversal begins with trust. Trust not in others' approval or in fleeting validation, but in the inherent order of life. When you release the need to control, to force outcomes, or to manipulate perception, you step into alignment with a deeper current. The universe does not respond to compulsion, it responds to presence. What you cease to pursue is no longer tainted by desperation, and in that absence of need, it regains its natural attraction. The very act of letting go reverses the energy of scarcity into abundance, of tension into flow, of longing into magnetic inevitability. The spiritual reversal is also an exercise in sovereignty. To stop chasing is to reclaim the authority over your own life, to recognize that your energy is finite and sacred. When you no longer beg for attention or recognition, you honor your own value without seeking external confirmation. When you stop explaining yourself, you claim your own narrative, allowing it to exist independent of judgment or misunderstanding. The reversal transforms absence into presence, withdrawal into influence, and restraint into power. The world may mistake silence for weakness, but in truth it is the calm before transformation, the still point from which all action gains clarity and potency. This principle operates on an energetic level. Desperation scatters energy, compulsion dissipates influence. In contrast, detachment consolidates force. By stepping back, by refusing to chase what is not aligned with your path, you create a gravitational field around yourself that draws the right circumstances, the right people, and the right opportunities. The law of attraction is not about effort alone. It is about allowing, about creating space for what is naturally yours to manifest. The reversal teaches patience and trust, for the universe moves in its own rhythm, and what arrives without force carries the weight of authenticity and permanence. The spiritual reversal also illuminates the dynamics of relationships. People who once demanded your constant pursuit begin to notice your absence, and in that noticing, clarity emerges. Boundaries are revealed not through confrontation, but through the natural pull of your own integrity. Some connections fade, proving they were never grounded in mutual respect. Others strengthen, drawn to the quiet certainty of your presence. The reversal exposes the truth of attachment and the illusions of dependency, guiding you toward interactions that honor energy rather than deplete it. Moreover, the spiritual reversal reshapes internal life. By releasing the compulsion to chase, you turn inward, discovering depth, self-awareness, and alignment that were previously obscured by distraction. In the absence of external obsession, clarity arises, inner authority emerges. The mind becomes quieter, the heart stronger, and the soul more attuned to the rhythms of existence. You begin to see that life's fulfillment is not earned through pursuit, but revealed through stillness, that true attraction flows toward those who are whole, not toward those who are desperate, and that the most profound power resides not in movement, but in the conscious act of allowing. Silence is often misunderstood. In a world obsessed with noise, with explanation, with constant output, silence is mistaken for emptiness, weakness, or indifference. Yet within silence lies a power that is invisible but undeniable, an alchemy that transforms weakness into strength, confusion into clarity, and reaction into presence. The alchemy of silence is the process by which the mind, heart, and spirit distill the chaos of life into concentrated wisdom, turning absence into influence, stillness into authority, and observation into understanding. The first element of this alchemy is presence. When you cease the compulsion to justify, to chase, or to defend, you step fully into the current moment. Silence is not passive. It is an active engagement with life that requires discipline and awareness. Every thought, every impulse, every emotion is witnessed rather than acted upon impulsively. In that witnessing, energy is no longer scattered but conserved, refined, and elevated. The person who has mastered the alchemy of silence does not expend themselves in reaction, but channels their presence, allowing it to resonate with depth, gravitas, and subtle influence. Silence also functions as a mirror, reflecting both the self and the world around you. In the absence of noise, the patterns of behavior, the hidden motives of others, and the truths of your own psyche become visible. You begin to see where energy is being drained, where attachment is masking autonomy, and where fear is masquerading as necessity. By refusing to speak or react impulsively, you allow life itself to unfold and reveal its lessons. The alchemy occurs as you internalize these revelations, transforming observation into wisdom, judgment into understanding, and chaos into discernment. There is also a protective dimension to silence. Words, explanations, and justifications often expose vulnerability, invite conflict, or dilute authority. By remaining silent, you shield your energy, creating a boundary that cannot be violated by external demands or expectations. Silence becomes a sanctuary, a space in which the self is not defined by others' perceptions but by its own integrity. In this sanctuary, you are free to think deeply, act deliberately, and cultivate the inner strength that allows presence to speak louder than any declaration. The alchemy of silence extends beyond protection. It is generative. What is silent draws attention not through force but through absence, creating a gravitational pull that attracts without seeking. People are drawn to the quiet strength that does not need to perform, to explain, or to convince. Opportunities emerge around those who are unshaken by external noise because the energy they project is coherent, grounded, and magnetic. Silence, in this sense, is not void. It is a field of potential, fertile ground from which clarity, influence, and authentic connection grow. Moreover, silence is transformative on an internal level. In the stillness, emotions settle, insights crystallize, and the mind organizes itself around what is truly essential. Anger, fear, and frustration, when not immediately externalized, reveal their hidden messages, allowing you to respond from wisdom rather than reaction. Pain and disappointment, when met with silence, become teachers rather than tormentors. Even joy and gratitude, when internalized and observed, deepen in intensity and resonance. The alchemy of silence converts every human experience into fuel for growth, insight, and empowerment. Silence also demands courage. To remain still, to withhold explanation, to refuse to chase validation, is to confront the discomfort of uncertainty and the temptation of impulsive action. It requires trust in yourself, trust in life, and trust in the natural unfolding of circumstance. The alchemy is complete when fear is transformed into composure, desire into patience, and impulsivity into deliberate presence. In this transformation, silence ceases to be mere absence and becomes an active, living force, shaping both the inner world and the outer reality in ways that words could never achieve.